Okay, so I said I'd do the crossbows next, and the crossbows it will be, although this list is actually even shorter than the trolls by one. But nonetheless, it's still worth doing because crossbows are potentially very strong. In vanilla medieval, they were the strongest skirmishers. That isn't the case anymore because they can be significantly outranged by the composite bows, and some of the composite bows have the comparable armor-piercing damage that the crossbows do. But nonetheless, the stopping power of the crossbows is still very, very deadly, particularly in a siege, whether offensive or defensive. So we'll start off at number 6. So at number 6 we have Rune's clan crossbows. They are, well, technically the worst crossbows, but no crossbows are particularly bad, I would say. They all have a place in an army. And the stats of the clan crossbows are 6 attack, 8 defense, and 5 charge, with very low melee stats as expected. They have 14 missile damage though, and that's pretty significant. It's better than a lot of archers, and for their price, that's good value for money. Of course, their problem is their durability. Their missile damage is actually better than a couple of other crossbows on this list, but they really are the definition of glass cannons, and you need to be too close. So particularly in a field battle, archers will be able to shred these guys because of their very low defense. They don't have good armor. In fact, their stats, in terms of having additional perks, they don't have any as such, other than the crossbow's native stats at range of being very good versus armor and such. So the clan crossbows, an interesting option that Rune have. I would say it's only going to be seen in a siege. In a field battle, they're just too easy to gun down at a distance. Even very basic archers would be able to do this job pretty easily with how weak they are to sustained arrow fire, but nonetheless, interesting option for a siege. Now we shall move on to number 5. So at number 5 we have Isengard's Uruk-hai crossbows, another returning unit of course, and their stats are a little better. They have 13 attack, 17 defense, and 6 charge. They only have 13 missile damage though, so slightly less than Rune's clan crossbows. But they also have good armor, so really the difference between the two here is a slight sacrifice of missile damage for a significant amount more durability. They have 9 more points of defense, and in addition to that they have good armor of their own. Every crossbow unit is still going to be vulnerable in a field battle to archers. There's no real getting away from that. You don't want to have a fully crossbow skirmisher force in the field because you're just going to let yourself get picked off. The archers have probably been buffed a little bit across the board in terms of relative power. They were always pretty strong in 3rd Age, but in Reforged I'd say they've become even more important simply because of how good the higher tier ones are. So crossbows, you can't really go for a full crossbow force in a field battle anymore, but they do still have their place, particularly in a siege, and particularly for Isengard, because the standard Uruk-hai pikes in addition to their crossbows is a pretty tried and tested combination. And it works in a siege very, very nicely on the attack or on the defense. In a field battle, it's a little bit more tricky to pull off, of course, because both of these units are susceptible to sustained arrow fire. And that's really Isengard's whole weakness, to be honest with you, but we'll get to that another time. But yeah, the Uruk-hai crossbows, the solid, dependable unit, really, that Isengard will be relying upon to do the majority of their ranged damage. Now we shall move on to number 4. So at number 4 we have the final returning, albeit reskinned unit in the Ironfoot Crossbows. Their stats again in melee are slightly better. They have 13 attack, 20 defense, and 7 charge. They also have 13 missile damage. They, however, can deploy stakes, which is a nice little addition. And also they have excellent armor and excellent stamina, which is really what sets them apart from the Uruk-hai crossbows. Their stats are pretty similar, other than a slightly higher defense. Really, the ability to deploy stakes and their excellent armor and stamina is enough to significantly raise them over the Uruk-hai crossbows. Of course, the dwarves, similar problem to Isengard in that they don't really have any. Well, they do have a new archer unit, which is pretty good, but ultimately they can't really form a skirmish force that can beat a lot of other factions at range. So they rely a little bit more on their crossbows, a little bit more on their armor piercing. They are very durable even in melee, of course, because of their excellent armor and stamina and that 20 defense. They won't win any melee battles on their own, but they can patch up a line when they're out of ammunition, and they will do a pretty commendable job at doing such. However, from here on in, it's 3 new units which occupy the top 3 spots, and we shall move on to number 3 right now. So at number 3 we have a significant addition for the Orcs of the Misty Mountains in their heavy Goblin crossbows. Their stats are 10 attack, 18 defense, and 6 charge. They have 14 missile damage though, and they have excellent armor, good stamina, and they are also good in the snow. Really, the fact that they have excellent armor and not too much, well, not too much in terms of, they don't have much of a deficit in terms of defense against the Ironfoot Crossbows. And that extra missile damage is what slightly raises them above the Ironfoots. And also they have a few more men in the unit. It's not a hugely significant thing, but very small margins are what makes the heavy Goblin crossbows better than the Ironfoots. And yeah, it's an interesting one for the Orcs of the Misty Mountains because their horde mentality will often mean you have to move forwards and use your numbers to overwhelm the enemy. This is an interesting thing to have, especially in an offensive siege. The crossbows were always something that Isengars used very well when they were attacking in a siege, and it's something that the Misty Mountains can now do also. Very interesting unit, a very good unit for the Misty Mountains to have. They needed a buff, they have received it in several places, and this is one of the more significant units they have at their disposal now. Good value for money as well, despite being their most expensive skirmisher, it's to be expected. But yeah, I like this unit a lot. But we will now move on to the two units which are exceptional on this list. So at number 2 we have the Dwarven Blacklock Engineers, and the one that I decided to put in first and the one that I decided to put in second was something which I struggled with. Because both of them are good at different things, and what the Blacklocks are good at really is what you would expect a crossbow to be good at. Their ranged capabilities, and their stats are 13 attack, 27 defense, and 7 charge, and their missile damage is, I believe it's the highest of any ranged unit in the game at the moment. It's at 20, which is a huge amount. So you may be wondering why they're not in first, but I'll get to that. There are additional things that they can deploy stakes, just like their other Dwarven crossbow unit. They're good in the snow, and they of course have excellent armor and stamina, as most high-tier dwarves do. Really, the reason I didn't put these guys in first is because of something that the unit in first can do, which these guys cannot. These guys are still going to be vulnerable to the two main banes of crossbows, and that is being able to be charged pretty easily by cavalry, and of course being picked off from range. Now these guys are very durable, of course, like most dwarven units are. That 20 missile damage is also very significant, but the thing is, crossbows will all do a great deal of damage if you use them correctly. The problem with crossbows is it's very easy to use them incorrectly. If you start arcing your shots with crossbows, the shots lose all their power and potency. All of the units on this list can potentially mow down a pike line in next to no time at all. They can even do a decent amount of damage against charging cavalry. So the 20 missile damage, while it is significant, none of the units on this list lack the stopping power. And all of these reasons are why, well, some of these reasons are why these guys only place second, but we'll now get on to why I didn't place them in first, because of the unit that actually inhabits that spot. So here we are, number 1, the Gatekeepers of Eriador, and their stats are 17 attack, 30 defense, and 8 charge. So similar to the Blacklock Engineers, they have significantly better attack and slightly better defense, so in melee at least they are better than the Blacklocks. They have 14 missile damage though, and that's only as good as the Clan Crossbows and Heavy Goblin Crossbows, but as I said, all crossbows can be used to devastating effect, potentially. They have excellent armor and stamina as well, so it means they are actually slightly more survivable than the Blacklocks at range because of that 3 extra defense. But then comes the two things which I believe put them in first. Now, being able to inspire nearby troops is nice, it's a slight advantage they have over the Blacklocks, but it wouldn't have been enough to push them over the edge overall. But what really does is that they are good versus cavalry in melee. Of course, you can see these large billhooks that they carry around, very Eriador-esque. And this means that enemy cavalry is really going to want to stay away from these guys, because not only will they be able to get a nasty volley off into charging cavalry, but in sustained melee they will destroy cavalry. And it means that one of the things that cavalry is often used for in terms of mopping up enemy skirmishes is not going to be as easy with these guys around. It's a real problem that you're going to find when you face Eriador. Eriador have got pretty good cav as it is, so your cav is likely to be pretty battered when getting through them, if you can at all. The Gatekeepers are what it takes to finish them off, and that being good versus cavalry melee is something which no other skirmisher has, to my knowledge, and it's what really sets them apart, and in my opinion it's good enough to make them number 1 on this list, and it even gives them a bit more utility in a field battle, because it means enemy cav is going to have a bit more of a problem, especially considering that Eriador have got a pretty decent repertoire of polearms anyway, in addition to their crossbows being supplied with such. But yeah, a very, very good unit. I really enjoy the Gatekeepers. I enjoy them so much that they were able to beat a unit that has 20 missile damage. Now that is a subjective opinion, of course. In a ranged battle, the gatekeepers will lose to the Blackrock engineers, but very rarely will you see two crossbows going at it like two musket lines in this game. And I had to think of it in a real battle situation, and in my opinion, the gatekeepers are just slightly better, but I'm sure that there are differing opinions on this already. Nonetheless, that was the crossbow list. So that was the crossbows, and next up I will actually be doing the javelins, because I've actually already sorted out that list into 1 to 10, and there were actually 10 javelins that I could use for that, so that's nice. We're going back to a proper top 10. After the javelins, I think it will probably be the composite bows at last, the archers, barring any difficulties I have with testing them. So yeah, javelins, then archers, it's the plan, and I hope to see you for them.